I think as we come through the shock of lockdown and coronavirus and the impact on our business, many of us are now beginning to think about what life might be like when we're allowed out again, and for our customers and our customers' customers. And this is what really I'm going to be talking about and asking you about over the course of the next 40 minutes or so. Yes, so who am I? I'm Andrew. I met Stuart a few weeks ago when he attended the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I work on that program as a growth expert or as a business coach. My background is marketing. Most of my life I've worked either agency side or as a publisher side, as a marketing director. And I'm still quite actively involved in the marketing space. I work for Google as one of their facilitators in the Google Digital Academy, traveling around Europe, delivering their brand activation labs, trying to help their big clients be more customer centric and thinking digital first. As you can imagine, there's not a great deal of that going on at the moment. Very happy to be here talking to you today about marketing in this new world. So what are we going to do? What are we going to cover over the next 40 minutes or so? I'm really going to talk about what I mean by marketing and thinking about marketing in a new world pre-COVID, and some of the models I think that we use now in terms of trying to make sure we get our right messages to the right people at the right time, and how people's customers and consumers' behavior has shifted. And then probably of most topicality is how that shifted now, how it shifted now with this horrible coronavirus that we've got, and how do we respond to that, and perhaps begin to think about, well, what do we do about it? What are our action plans, and what might this new normal look like for us going forward? So let's start. I want to think about what is marketing, and Penny said a few questions around that we'd put together between us last week in terms of what people thought marketing was or what marketing meant to them and how it's changed. And for those of you who responded, thank you very much. It was very much what I expected to hear, and how people describe marketing. But for the benefit of everybody else, it'd be really helpful. Why don't we put some, I'd like everybody just to go into the chat, open the chat, and just type in simply what they think, what marketing means to them in their business at the moment. And Penny and I'll have a look at that, and we'll kick on from there. So open the chat if you can, and type in what you think marketing is. Stunned silence. No messages in the chat.
Yeah, or you can say it. Here we go. Exposure of services to the market. Oh gosh, there's a lot of things coming out.
Good.
Communicating with the market we operate in, regulated and compliance. Stuart. Richard is positioning and advertising your business for sales growth. Sean is building relationships within a similarly focused group of people. Mal is inbound leads. Steve is marketing as a method of communicating with clients and prospects, creating brand awareness. Tony, lifeblood to the business awareness for both existing and new clients. Ben, enhancing our customer experience. Mark Hamilton, customer touch positively. Una, bonding with existing clients and keeping leads warm. I'm only reading this out because some people might be dialed in. I know you can all read. Asad was building trust with customers and prospects. Mark Williams was used to be lead generator, now it's a service to understand the market and develop brand and messaging, not just lead generator.
Interesting. I think there's lots of good stuff there, and I'm interested in that last point, particularly by Mark, when we talk about used to be a lead generator, now it's a service to understand the market and develop brand and messaging. And it kind of really good stuff there, really good comments that people have put in. as with most things that, it's not black and white. There's not right or wrong. If that's what the marketing means to your business, great. At least we're thinking about it. And the piece around understanding from market is really key for me, because when I think about marketing, I like to go back to this Chartered Institute of Marketing's definition. And we talk about it as a management process responsible for identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer requirements profitably. If it's not profitably, well, you're just running a hobby, not a business. But identifying, anticipating is really, really key, because arguably this is the area when we're talking about being marketing led rather than being purely sales led, is where we're thinking about what our customers want or may want, anticipating that, and building our services and our pricing and our propositions around that. And I think that is really, really key for us, that here there's no mention of communication. And I think often people talk about marketing and advertising in almost an interchangeable way. And this perhaps why it isn't necessarily interchangeable is quite different. Interestingly enough, if you look at this definition, you think, well, isn't it a bit narrow? Well, even the Chartered Institute of Marketing thought it was a little bit narrow, and it introduced a few years ago this broader definition, and I suppose what I've highlighted in this slide, and it's a bit long, not perhaps as catchy as the other one, and perhaps too long because it hasn't really stuck, although it does introduce a lot of what you were describing there in the chat about building brands, developing relationships, maybe creating good customer service and communication. But what I think is really interesting here is still this first paragraph. And I think that what we're looking at when we're talking about anticipating customer needs is ultimately through that anticipation, we actually can build a pipeline of business. And actually, when we perhaps nub it all down, I think my favorite way of describing marketing is all about demand creation. And say not communication. Communication arguably is a subset or is a activity that we would engage, but marketing is the process of demand creation, and you can only create that demand by having that anticipation and understanding what people look for. Now, people may well say, well, sales and marketing, same thing, isn't it? Well, no, not really, because I believe sales is demand fulfillment. You can't have one without the other. And I think that the fulfillment, arguably, you could fulfill demand in a marketplace and be a sales-led organization without having to worry about marketing. However, if you want to really grow your business, we should be talking about creation of that demand in the first place by anticipating customer needs, and then going in and making sure we have the tools and the processes in place to actually fulfill it appropriately. So when we're talking about growth and we're talking about marketing, we're really talking about that demand creation, and we're talking about that demand fulfillment at the end of the day. Now, anticipating customer needs, if we think that's a fundamental aspect of the marketing process, it's interesting to perhaps begin to think about how do we do that within our business. Now, there are many ways that we might do that. The thing that immediately springs to mind is that description of research. Yes, we'll do some market research, and maybe we'll do some polls and surveys, etc., etc. And I would argue that that's very relevant, but it is quite analog. And I think that arguably in a digital world, whilst we can do the research, that tends to be where we are and perhaps looking back. But the reality, there are a number of tools through digital marketing that we can actually use to actually help us refine and then define what our customer needs might be. So what I'm interested in is just to think about this whole piece around anticipating customer needs. Can you, in the chat box, highlight some of the things that you do in your businesses currently to help you anticipate customer needs. And if the answer is none, well, so be it. And then we've kind of perhaps provided a different context to marketing from today, or even if you have lots of these techniques or things that you're doing, will demonstrate perhaps how much we are leveraging this view on marketing. So just type into the chat box what you do to anticipate your customers' needs.
Talk to customers.
Yeah, very important.
Stuart.
Talk to customers, ask them what they want, what they appreciate that you do, whereas we'll talk about creative value. And yes, listen to customers as well. Very important, Richard. I would agree that, we can talk to them, but listening is very important. Research previous trends from customers and communicate with them. Absolutely. What have they done historically? What have they looked? What have they said? What have they bought from you? Develop customer journeys. Ben's mentioned and measure the success. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about customer journeys very, very shortly. So yes, think about the route they take to buy within your category or buy services like you. Ask them directly. But again, the interesting thing is often they will tell you, A, what they want you to hear, or B, as much as they can understand themselves. So I think, yes, talking to customers is really, really important. Looking at how they view your content, absolutely. How much time they spend in it, how much do they engage with it. So yeah, thought leadership and road mapping. Yeah, thought leadership, again, could be pushing things out into the marketplace. So yeah, some really, really good things there in terms of what you're doing to anticipate what your customers are looking for, or maybe looking for you in the future. And why we do that is because ultimately, we cannot be relevant if we don't meet those customer needs. And the thing is if we don't meet those needs, well, how can we meet those needs unless we've actually asked them, spent some time with them, anticipated what they're looking for, seeing trends in the marketplace? Because the reality of this is that, yes, you may, and this is where if you were to take a sales-led approach, yeah, we want to say, we want to we want to fulfill what's out there in the marketplace. We have lots of things to say. But if there is no overlap with what people are interested in, what they are looking for, how they need to build their business, what we're saying isn't relevant. And if we aren't relevant, we aren't going to resonate. We aren't going to understand what people are looking for. And I think that's really key for us, is that anticipation and meeting those needs are fundamental. So we have got to think about, as somebody mentioned, in the chat here, about, well, we've got to really think about the journey that they're on, because invariably people are on a journey to satisfy a series of particular needs or jobs to be done within their business. And the greater influence we have over the course of that journey and helping them achieve, I suppose, their goal or arrive at the destination they're looking for, the better placed we will be to actually drive sales and drive a business revenue from that relationship. So customer journeys are really, really important. Now, the thing is that customer journeys, we would argue, have changed. They've changed from perhaps, well, I would argue maybe they haven't changed, but our perception of them has changed. In an analog world, we used this rather befuddled model of the sales funnel created over 100 years ago and applied it in the marketing context. It always worries me when somebody takes a model and changes its fundamental orientation. Funnels to me are from top down. Once you put a funnel on its side, there's another word beginning with F that springs to mind. And that's because this is not a pretty good representation of how we buy. It is not a representation of we spend all our money communicating with loads of people to build awareness, knowing full well the vast majority of them are not interested and will not consider us, and a very few will buy at the end of it. Well, A, it's inefficient, and B, people don't actually buy in that linear way. And if you look at McKinsey, it came up with a new model, which is, I say new, it's not that new, but it's been around a few years, which says, hey, the funnel in a digital age is dead. If it was ever alive, if it was just a misappropriation of a sales funnel. The marketing journey is more like a pretzel. And why it's more like a pretzel is because people spend more and more time in active evaluation because they're influenced by far more touch points like content, like social media, like thought leadership information. And what they're finding is that they are information gathering, shopping in a consumer sense, for far, far longer, and may well actually arrive at a moment of purchase on a platform that doesn't belong to the brand at all. The sad fact of life is that in a digital age, most customer journeys do not start with a brand, which may sound like heresy, but we do need actually to grow up and appreciate that. What tends to happen is that actually most customer journeys start with a job to be done, a need, a gap in what you're doing currently, an opportunity to improve what you do. Doesn't start with a piece of brand communication saying, oh, I never realized a car. Now what have Ford got to offer? Kind of doesn't start there. Same with, oh, should I need a mobile phone these days? Or should I be working in the cloud? I probably know that already. It's some specific issues that I need to address along with that. So what we see is that actually brands don't drive the journey. It's lots of influences that drive the journey. And if we look at perhaps a slightly different customer journey, now here's one, it's a consumer journey. Let's talk about going on holiday. We all wish we could go on holiday, and sadly we can't at the moment. But at some point we will again. So if we think about the traditional brand and channel-led customer journey, something we might have done when the high street was open and we had travel agents, we would pick up brochures, we'd go on holidays, we'd search, we'd have a whole series of analog and digital touch points, and ultimately we would book that holiday through one channel, go, and then maybe check on things when we came back. In a new world, we don't do that. We find, and there's lots of evidence to show that actually is far more engagement about the travel and the holiday when you've actually booked it. Because we talk about a series of moments that people are in. I want to get away moments, time to plan moments, let's book it moments, can't wait to explore moments. And these moments increasingly are driven by behavior on digital channels, mobile channels again, as well as desktop channels. So what we're seeing is that actually this is far more representative of this kind of mixed pretzel type approach to a journey. There is a model that we can use that is probably potentially far better than the funnel model. It's a model introduced by Avinash Kushnik, Google marketing evangelist. He's written a weblog, Occam's Razor, really interested in thinking about data and data-driven customer journeys. And what he says is that actually the customer journey these days should be built more upon intent and is non-linear. The reality is we move back and forth from a phase of when we have maybe part of your qualified audience but have no intent whatsoever. Then we probably have some intent. They may be pricked by a piece of communication. When we're trying to find out more, we need to be helped to actually engage with your brand when we really need something. And then when we need to explore how to develop a relationship with your brand or your business, or to buy further services from you. And what we talk about is that actually thinking about the moments that people might be in are clustered around these different levels of intent. And the point being is that you should be communicating different things to different people based upon the intent. and arguably this intent that can be identified by the signals they give off. Let me give you an example. So here's an example of a client of mine. It's a cloud-based telephony business based up in the north where I am, called Concert. And they work primarily in the legal sector. And if you think about what their value proposition is, their value proposition is to help progressive organizations who want to enhance their customer experience and loyalty by improving communication flow and making the use of the cloud that much more simple. Now, I said they work in a specific market sector, which helps them target, I suppose, arguably their communication and their messaging and their marketing. But it doesn't really do much more than that in terms of sort of saying, well, do I have to spend a huge amount of money targeting all legal practices? Whilst the reality, which is that no, since most of those, if you think that old funnel analogy, are in contract, have never considered the cloud for telephony, not within your geographical footprint that you could service effectively, perhaps. So what they said is, well, actually, let's look at the moments that people that are in and how they communicate those moments, and therefore if we can market with our messaging more effectively at those moments that people are in, why do we do that? So these are some of the things that people are looking for, the key issues with their business. Trying to anticipate their needs means messaging through key channels when they might be in any of those moments. And the reality of it is that you clearly would communicate quite differently to someone who had not considered cloud telephony to somebody who actually is contract with their current provider of cloud telephony is coming to an end, because their needs are very, very different. And that's why we now thinking about behavior in an intent-based world gives us a different way of looking at things. So when we think about intent-based marketing, it allows us to understand those moments people are in, refine our messages accordingly. If we look at the data signals, the kind of searches, the Google Trends, what people are saying on Twitter or on LinkedIn or in those professional circles, we can target our messages more effectively. And when we understand that intent, we will message in a far more resonant way. And that's arguably what we mean by relevance. And of course, what that kind of takes us into now is to say, well, that's fine, but how are people behaving now? What levels of intent do people have in this world of COVID-19? Where are we now? How can we begin to anticipate what customer needs are, how those customer journeys have perhaps changed, and how do we begin to message in a more effective way, which is, I suppose, empathetic to the context that people find themselves. So I just want to ask you a question. If we think about COVID-19 and the impact, it's some really interesting work done by McKinsey I'm going to share with you in a moment. But I want us to think about, if you think about the last 4 weeks, and certainly this whole process of lockdown, think about ourselves as individuals. What are we doing less of or buying less of, or who are you interacting less with than we were in the first couple of months of the year? Let's get some views in the chat here of what we're doing less of, and then we'll look at what actually is happening. Booze, yeah, that's. I would have thought we were doing, Mark, more booze, not less booze, as we haven't got to worry about driving. Petrol, absolutely, yeah. Any travel, absolutely. And interesting thing when thinking about travel sector is that how are we going to travel when this new normal comes back again? Trade shows, absolutely. Meeting people face to face, being cancelled completely. And if you think about, do we find that actually this sort of communication is an acceptable I suppose, substitute or not. No face-to-face meetings. Yeah, turn your camera off. You could do that as well. No sport. Yeah, and I think that's really hard. Business development, interesting point. I would say that with young biz dev people or salespeople that we saw, or account managers, were not as comfortable talking as perhaps maybe older people might have been, and we're resorting to email and communication like this. I'm getting some interesting feedback now saying that people are desperate to talk, that actually people that you could never speak to on the phone in normal times are only delighted to be interrupted from the monotony of their day-to-day life now. So yeah, long-term decision making is changing for customers, only short-term vital transactions. That's interesting, and I'm glad, Mark, you picked up on timing and periodicity, because that's something that we are going to come on to when we think about, well, what do we do about this? If we look at the impact of COVID-19, this is the latest thinking from McKinsey in the last few days or so, is that let's look at how we expect to spend per category over the next 2 weeks compared to usual. And yes, even alcohol is down, you know. So when we look at this, only groceries, household supplies, and maybe entertainment at home are things that we're thinking of. You know, the other areas, and when we think about domestic flights, international flights and travel, is way, way down. So, you know, much as we might expect, much as we might have thought, and it's absolutely the case. And we think about that, yes, those are some consumer purchases there. But if we think about how we take that into a broader context in terms of thinking about, you know, how are we going to come out of this? What's our view in terms of economic recovery, and how quick is this going to be? You know, what we're seeing is in the UK, in the middle of this slide here, over half of people are really unsure as to see where the economy is going to be impacted. And yes, we did see some information in the news last night saying that, you know, rather draconian views to say that if we don't bounce back, that our economy could be 30% smaller than it was before COVID-19, which is unparalleled, unprecedented. So, you know, when we think about this and we try to predict about what we need to do, and it's anticipating needs going forward, where might things change? And I would argue a lot of the things that were changing, a lot of the markets that were, you know, in a difficult place post-Brexit, post-Greta Thunberg, being more corporately responsible. And I think about that in terms of travel, hospitality, and automotive as two or three key areas. These are real issues. So if we are servicing into those sectors, I think that what we're seeing is some very immediate short-term impact and also long-term impacts as well. You know, are we going to drive to work? Maybe we will drive to work because we don't want to go on public transport and social distancing. Are there other ways? Are we going to go to work, whatever going to work is, as much as it is? Will we ever go on a cruise ship again if we've been on one before, where social distancing is virtually impossible? And so when we think about this, we think about the high street, we think about shopping, we're thinking about buying t-shirts. How many t-shirts does one person need? We to think about, you know, buying clothing, thinking about Far East, thinking about clean air. You know, what's going to happen for us, and what sectors are we servicing that are going to change? Are they going to change immediately, and how lasting those changes are going to be? And I've kind of put together a grid that may help you think about your customers and clients. And this kind of classic Boston consultancy group matrix is kind of trying to plot in this and sort of say, well, hang on, there's two criteria here. There's immediacy and endurance. And I'm thinking about this in terms of, well, is this impacting our customers now, or will it impact our customers later? And I think it's very interesting when you're working with clients, as I'm sure you are, and talking to them now as I am, is to say, well, you know, I know things are bad from a personal perspective, but the business is okay because we still have that pipeline of business coming through. And that's because there's a delay when we're turning off that tap of leads. But what does this mean for us in the future? You know, when we flick the switch or when the tap opens up again, there will be a lag before we actually find there are people coming back into the business again, or being potential prospects for us. And I think then there's the other thing as well, is that, okay, people are changing what they do now, but will it endure? Will it really be a significant behavioral change in terms of travel or the workplace, or how we go to work, security within the workplace, cyber security, just seeing about how comfortable will be with communicating core business information over potentially unsecure applications such as Teams or Zoom or whatever. So maybe the way to look at this is to think about, well, how hard will it hit us and how long will it last? Begin to use this grid to begin to think about anticipating what our customers' needs and wants might be going forward. Where else can we look? Well, what can help us in trying to put a grid like this together? Well, the most obvious one, I think, is when we look at Google Trends. Google Trends, very, very helpful in terms of helping you understand what consumer needs are or business behavioral shifts in uncertain terms. And the way they've categorized us with their trends currently is an interesting way to look at it, is to say, what are our immediate needs? What's happening in this new day-to-day environment we're living in? And what are emerging behaviors that are going to stick for the long term? And actually, we did joke, just as some of us were coming on the call earlier on, about these new day-to-day behaviors. How do I cut my hair? And it is going to be important. How do we do things like this? How do I communicate? How do I run virtual meetings? How do I build, I suppose, communication going forward? So I think that when we think about this, is to say, if we have these shifts going on and we go back to constant networks, let's think about a customer value proposition. How might our customer value proposition change as a result of COVID-19? And when we think about this, it's what can help us is a tool we use on this Goldman program, and again, it's in the marketplace, the business model canvas, from Strategizer. And at the heart of the business model canvas is the value proposition, and thinking about where do you add value to your customers based upon what these customers' needs might be. And I think it's important now to think about behavioral shift in the context of, have our customers' jobs changed? Are there new jobs? Are the old jobs maybe redundant? Have they changed into something else? What problems did they face before, or might they face now, or what benefits may they gain from using the services or technology you have in a different way? Because what that drives is potentially a shift in your own value proposition, where you need to think about the pain relievers and where you think you create the gain, and how you might bundle your products and services. Does your pricing need to change? Does your model need to work differently? And there may be some real benefits. Interestingly enough, one of the chaps on this current cohort with Stuart, he has a wonderful job. He just fits out gyms on large luxury yachts. Well, guess what? You may well think that his business has fallen off a cliff in the last 4 weeks. Well, it has in that sector, but actually you can't buy dumbbells for love nor money in this country, because actually everybody wants to buy stuff for gyms at home. And that's how he has pivoted their business. Whether it will change to move, should we say, more consumer rather than business, who knows? But I tell you, the interesting thing is that they often, a large opportunity to kit out gyms at home, and then yachts come for those people who are just looking for an extra set of dumbbells at this point in time. So thinking about our customers, what their needs are, their jobs to do, enables us to perhaps anticipate what that future might look like. It kind of takes us to where we titled today in terms of major shift or minor tweak. Well, I would think that perhaps to predict this without a crystal ball that none of us have is to say, well, actually, it comes back to your value proposition. If there's a big change in your value proposition predicated upon your customer segments and the jobs they need to do and the way in which they need to do them, if those are changing a large amount, well, then actually your marketing, because your anticipation of this and your communication and your messaging and the channels that you use are probably going to change in a large way too. If they're not, and having done this analysis, you can probably feel confident that actually I'm going to need to tweak what I do to meet the immediate needs or maybe the day-to-day needs, and maybe altering my tone of voice to be more empathetic to what people are facing, rather than thinking I'm going to have to fundamentally reorder my business. This kind of takes us on to where we are now and what can you do. At the end of the day, we're going to be very practical in these last few slides in terms of what you can do now. Well, arguably, if you think about what we should be saying is what people want to hear, and some of the latest work by Kantar, the research company, is saying, well, what do consumers expect from brands now? I think this is applicable in the B2B space equally well. I think people are looking to trusted brands and suppliers to provide them with safety and security, and I think they want to know that the people that they are dealing with are in control of their supply chains, there is transparency, and they are trustworthy, and they speak in an open and a clear way. And I think that actually they're expecting brands and companies to do the right thing, understand that actually they're not looking to exploit the difficult circumstances many people are facing, and feel that actually they're doing right by the community. And certainly in the UK here, people, I believe, will remember those companies and organisations that are supporting the NHS, and it's great to see some initiatives within Euro Alliance as well in terms of people using their 3D print capabilities to actually, build PPE for the NHS. So I think that's really, really important, and not to shrink into a corner and feel that you have nothing relevant to say. Make sure you have got something relevant to say, because there's a lot of research, admittedly not from situations that are as difficult as where we are now, that show that people that do communicate, do invest in their marketing in recessionary times, do actually benefit as a result from that. Which sort of takes us to the last slide I really wanted to share with you, is that, okay, when we wrap it all up, what can you do now? And I think that in terms of what you can do now falls neatly into these, I suppose, these three buckets of based around immediacy. What can you do now? What can you do in the short term? And by this, I probably mean 1 to 3 months. And then if we're talking about mid to longer term, 3, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, is to look at your action plan. And your first action plan is this immediate response, is this customer communication based upon what I was describing in terms of what are people expecting here. Business continuity, communication with your key customers, talking to them about what you're achieving, reaching out to them to making sure that you can help and support them in their changed working environments, and make sure that you're giving them the information as well, arguably to support them in their communication with their end consumers or customers too. So think about things that are really relevant in terms of your product suite or your service suite in now, and arguably maybe changing those service or product configurations, perhaps to reach out to people in this current time now in terms of changes, maybe your subscription model. I think that what we think about in the short term is to think about, okay, how is our value proposition going to shift? What are our customer needs? How are they changing? How do we think about change management in terms of pivoting our business model, pivoting our product or service specifications and maybe our pricing? I'm beginning to think, what are the implications in terms of our brand communication and our marketing strategy in terms of reinforcing communication, reaching out to new customer segments, testing or quantifying what our new propositions might be. And then when we go beyond that is to think about, okay, and if we think that's right, what are we going to do to scale up our investment or to build our marketing, in that new world, and arguably think about, kicking on and I suppose building a resurgence in demand, which there will be. There's no question about it. If you have rethought about your proposition, where you are, customer segments, refining or pivoting your product or service model. If you've done that correctly, there clearly will be a huge demand. We can't just write off 2020 as it didn't even happen without thinking about 2021 and where we go forward. Which is kind of where we are, is where I wanted to end up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for interacting. I'm happy to answer any questions or respond to any thoughts that you might have. Thank you.
So if anyone has a question, if you want to let me know in the chat pane, if there's, and I can let you ask your question, that'd be great. You don't have to type it in the chat pane, just let me know. It's probably faster to speak it. Nobody at all?
Well, a couple of comments coming through. Hopefully you found it, hopefully you found it useful, and a couple of you are that, yeah, it's interesting. Steve saying car sales down by 50%. I think it'll be a lot more than that, actually. Yeah, but as I say, what we'll do is I'll make these slides available through Penny, and yeah, as I say, if hopefully you did find it useful, and yeah, good luck with everything, everybody.
So, Penny, just a question from me, from
Yes.
Ryan. In terms of the resources that you've got, you mentioned Mackenzie and a few of the subscriptions. Are they subscriptions, or are they free resources that we could get access to?
I was going to say, everything I've shared with you today has come from free sources. If you go on to McKinsey, you can sign up to their newsletter. Everything that was there were reports and articles that they've featured over the last couple of months. And I have to say, the quality of what they're pushing out at the moment has been very good. So I can, again, also through Penny, I can, I can send some of those PDFs to you anyway as well.
Andrew's guy here.
There's also a lot of good info from IDC. There's also some good info from IDC coming out. So I'll share that on the group as well with regard to some of the trends. So, okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Was that Guy just asking a question?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was just waiting for Brian to shut up. Cheers, Brian. Yeah, Andrew, thank you for that. It's really, really useful session, actually. Now, obviously, marketing your way out of a recession or economic downturn or what have you is obviously it's really reassuring to see some of those slides you put up there. But have you got any like case studies or any businesses that have done that particularly well in the past, in past crises or recessions or what have you, that actually we can go away and have a look at and read up on in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I have got, Guy. I've got access to a paper from WARC, which is the World Advertising Research Council. They have republished some information from 2008 and beyond. I can't promise that they will. The sector is necessarily specific, but there's some good thinking in there, and certainly I will. I'll make that available at Penny to share with you as well as part of a package of stuff.
That'd be superb. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions before we finish up? Great. Well, just wanted to thank Andrew because I thought that was really not only pertinent for where we are now, but a great lesson in marketing and what it is and what it isn't. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and I will follow up with the information a bit later on this afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.